is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. It's a beautiful day in the garden today, so hopefully you guys are having an amazing day wherever you are at. I got Aiden in the garden today with me, and we're kind of tackling some garden chores that we really needed to get caught up on. And one of those garden chores that we're going to be tackling today is our onion bed. Now, onions are fairly weak and feeble when it comes to their ability to fight off and defend weeds. If you're looking at big things like zucchinis and cucumbers and the dinner plate sized leaves of the garden, broccoli, cabbage, those giant leaves, they can pretty easily fend off and hold their own against weed pressure. Once the plants get growing, they pretty much just shade out everything that's around them. And that's one amazing benefit to growing high intensity, is that as the leaves grow up, the leaves basically don't cover themselves completely of each plant, but they do shade the in-between, all the space between the rows, and that helps to shade out and smother out weeds, which is fantastic for reducing how much you have to weed. However, there's a few crops that you still have to weed and be fairly diligent about it. One of those is garlic, obviously in the allium family, but also onions. And the reason why is because they don't have leaves that are large and defensive. They're very much requiring you to take care of them. They're very much a coddling plant. And that's why a lot of gardeners don't prefer to grow them, because they need to be coddled so much. And if you're a gardener that doesn't have a lot of time to take care of your plants, it can be a crop that can really struggle. Now, will you get something? Absolutely. I mean, the onion's gonna grow and you're still gonna get something to harvest, but are you going to get your beautiful softball-sized onions? Absolutely not. And then on the additional side to that point, if you do get large onions, weeds can spread things like bacteria and disease, which have been found by many studies to actually cause a reduction of shelf life. One of the most common is known as center rot. And center rot is spread by a bacteria that actually will rot out the center of the onion. If you've ever cut through an onion and the very center of the onion is brown and mushy, that's center rot. And that's spread by a bacteria. And the bacteria is actually found on the leaves of weeds, which is crazy. And so in order to have the most disease-free, healthy onions possible, we need to weed. Now, also, weeding is also gonna help to unlock more nutrients for the plants, things like nitrogen, right? Onions are a leaf crop. A lot of gardeners don't see onions as a leaf crop, they see onions as a root crop. Roots are kind of the afterthought for onions because they're actually a bulb, and the bulb stores energy for the plant in future years. And if you actually grow, or you focus on the growth of the onion, the leaves of the onion, that's going to correlate to a larger onion later on. And so the key component for growth is nitrogen. And when you're looking at this weed here, which is an edible weed, it's one that we actually grow and consume. It's just growing where we don't want it, which is what makes it a weed. This is purslane. And purslane is a leafy crop, uses tons of nitrogen. You probably might also be combating things like grass. Grass uses a ton of nitrogen. Things like dandelions. Any leafy green crop like that, that's primarily leaves, uses a ton of nitrogen. And that's gonna steal energy away from your onions, reducing the overall size of them. So we need to make sure that we weed these out so that we reduce disease, increase nitrogen for the plants to utilize and grow. We're also then, after we weed, going to follow up with some more fertilizer. That's one thing that I'd really encourage you guys to do, is follow up with some more fertilizer, because the weeds that are growing have already used some of that nutrients. And you wanna make sure that you replenish and refertilize so they have something to grow with. And then the final thing that it's going to help the onions do is obtain more water. Onions love lots of water. They're a water-rich crop, and that's what helps the bulbs get nice and large. So it's gonna help to conserve moisture as well. So we're gonna get back here, we're gonna get to weeding this purslane. Hope you guys are gonna enjoy. Let's go. So purslane is actually known as the memory herb by the Chinese, and that's because it's rich in omega-3 fatty acids. It is very delicious, but it's something that, if it's growing where you don't want it to grow, it's a weed. And it will spread very quickly because it's actually a vine. Wherever the stem touches down against soil, it'll set down new roots. It is also known more commonly as portulaca. Now, not all portulaca is edible. You want to be very careful, but if you've ever seen a flower called desert rose, desert rose is portulaca, otherwise known as purslane. So, but there's lots of cultivated varieties of purslane that are edible, and it's luckily a very shallow rooted vegetable as well, so it's fairly easy to weed out. It doesn't cause much disturbance to the overall soil. So one of the unintended benefits of weeding your onions, as I was sitting here, I realized there was a really glaring benefit to weeding your onions. Yes, you are going to get more nutrients and you are going to get more water to your onions. Those are all obvious benefits. But one unintended benefit is that it's actually going to break up the surface tension of the soil. Now, the top of the soil will do what's called bake or cake. And that's where the surface of the soil actually will get really hard from weathering. It could be from rain, it could be from sun, it could be from wind, and it creates basically a very tough shell on the outer surface of the soil. It usually only extends about 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep in the soil if you have really good quality soil. But all soil, if left bare, will bake and cake. And that creates a hard shell that presses in on the onions. And when that happens, onions are very tender bulb. They don't have the ability to push and kind of erupt the soil like radishes or beets do. They're very tender and they'll actually kind of form to their soil. And if the soil is too compacted, it'll press in on them, reducing their size. That's a problem that many onion growers have, is they say, oh, my onions look beautiful, but my bulbs are really small. And the first question I usually go to is, how compacted is your soil? That's a big, big reason. And that's also why you don't want to plant your onions too deep, is the deeper you plant them, the more pressure the soil has on the bulb and the smaller the bulb is going to be. And so by weeding them, you're actually going to be naturally disturbing that top 1 to 1.5 inches of soil, because that's where the roots are for the weeds. And when you do that, it's going to break that up, allowing the onion to actually expand and grow. So an unintended benefit of weeding your onions is bigger onions. It's not the most fun thing, right? But it's all about finding the silver lining. For me, it's about realizing that if I didn't do it, I would have a very mediocre harvest. And so it's worth it for me to come out here and weed this half bed of onions, because I've got probably close to 200 onions here. 200 onions at a pound, pound and a half per onion. That's 200 pounds of onions in like 30 square feet. It's pretty amazing. All right, so you guys know that I'm kind of an innovator by heart. Love to kind of solve problems in the garden and make life easier so that you're working smarter, not harder. And one thing that I realized when I was pulling this purslane up is that the roots were fairly shallow. I could basically just grip, 20, 30 plants, maybe even more, all at once and get all the roots. And it was a really fast way of weeding the garden. The problem is when you do that, you get a lot of soil. And so I thought, well, I've got a soil sifter. And so what I decided to do was to throw the soil and the weeds right into the soil sifter. Aiden's kind of holding it up so it's supported above the plant. And you could definitely build kind of a frame to hold the sifter up higher, and you could basically just move it down the bed. But I devised this method that I'm calling speed weeding. And it's just a simple way of weeding your garden, grabbing the soil and all, not really worrying about what you're getting. Obviously, I'm being intentional not to like rip up the plants and really cause a huge disturbance, but I'm just basically grabbing what I normally would grab, but I'm not shaking every piece off. I'm not worrying about what's falling. I'm kind of just grabbing it and I'm going. And this allows me to weed probably 3 to 4 times faster. And then what we'll do is we will turn the handle of the soil sifter, and essentially the purslane, because the leaves are so large, and this is only about a 1/4 inch thick or so, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick, I think 1/4 inch thick. It's going to trap all the purslane and all the big leafed, broad leafed plants, and all the fine soil that we wanted to keep in the bed is going to stay in the bed. So I'll show you how it works. All right, so now that we've gotten the hopper pretty full, I'm just gonna give it a tip, and you can go ahead and crank it. Mosquito. All right, so now that we've got it sifted out, check it out. This is literally 100% just weeds. There's no dirt in this. This is absolutely amazing. So there you guys go. I hope you enjoyed that quick little demonstration on speed weeding. I imagine you could probably make a frame out of PVC to, like I said, elevate it off the raised bed and then kind of just slide it up and down the raised bed so that you're putting the soil back right where you're taking it out. And obviously we're gonna come back in probably a week or two and finish weeding this bed off and get it nice and cleaned up. Weeding is all about doing it in stages. You're never gonna get them all at once, but if we can get 80–85% of them, we can follow up in 2 weeks, and the remaining 15% is going to be easy. So, but this is really going to be, I think, an easy way to weed your bed faster and to work smarter, not harder. So let me know in the comments box below if you try this method and how it works for you. I think you'll really like it, and I don't think it's exclusive to just purslane. I bet you could probably do it with things like grass. You could probably do it with things like dandelions. I mean, any weed for that matter that has broad leaves is going to get trapped by the grate, and any soil is going to fall through. So I think it'll work for just about anything, but give it a shot. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home. I'll catch you guys later. See ya.